Okay, to recap, we've covered off how to prepare for financial freedom. We've covered off creating a plan so that you know what financial freedom looks like and how you're going to get there. And now we've looked at how we're going to get your money working as hard for you as possible so that we can get you to financial freedom as quickly as possible and keep you in financial freedom as long as possible. The next step is when you're actually going to hit retirement. In the lead up to and at retirement, you have some massive financial decisions to make. And that's where the Dream Income Strategy can help you make the best decisions possible to get you the best bang for all of that money that you've worked hard to put aside over the years. So you've probably got the hang of it now, but the Dream Income Strategy is a 5-step process. A 5-step process where we're going to show you how you can really maximise the different types of pensions that you've got and make the best decisions possible for your retirement. And I want to start off by talking about a group of pension schemes that you've probably got. And that is pension schemes that were provided by your employer. Now there's really 2 types of pension schemes that are provided by your employer nowadays. There's final salary schemes, or otherwise known as defined benefit schemes. And then there's a whole load of other schemes, which can be money purchase schemes, group personal pension. All of those are essentially the same nowadays as personal pensions. For nearly all reasons, they're almost the same. So I'm going to come back to your options with those in a minute. Really, for the purposes of this, I want to just talk about, for this section in the Dream Income Strategy, I just want to talk about these defined benefit or final salary pension schemes. Because these have got talked about a lot. Really, really valuable schemes. They're probably the Rolls-Royce of pension schemes, in that your income is guaranteed for the rest of your life once you get to retirement. You put in a set amount, they put in whatever is required, they take the investment risk, your employer takes all of the risk, and you just get a guaranteed, usually index-linked income for the rest of your life. Which sounds fantastic. The problem is, that's also a bit of a hook to hang on to. And in years gone by, when people got these final salary pension schemes, we would almost always be saying the best thing to do is to keep them where they are. And for many people, that's still the same. It's still the case that probably keeping a final salary scheme is the right thing to do. But the reason that the pendulum has started to swing the other way and more people wanting their money out is because of the new flexibility you can get with having the money in a personal arrangement. I'm going to come on to that in a minute. But the second reason is because the amount of money you're being offered to leave these schemes has risen massively. What we're talking about here is the amount. So with a final salary scheme, you've got this guaranteed index-linked income for you in the future. But as an alternative, the scheme will offer you a lump of money to transfer to your own personal scheme, and so that you can manage it as you see fit. And the lump of money that they're offering you has risen a lot over recent years because of low interest rates, because of quantitative easing. In fact, we've seen clients where the transfer value they're offered has doubled in as little as 18 months because the schemes are just revaluing based on low inflation. They also want rid of these deferred members because otherwise they sit on the company balance sheet until the day they die. In fact, even the day that their spouse dies. So as a result, they quite like getting rid of people out of these schemes. So if you've got a final salary pension scheme or another type of defined benefit pension scheme, what I would say is really important that you review it. It's absolutely vital that you go to a fully chartered financial planning firm to do so, because there's been a lot of instances of people being encouraged to come out of final salary schemes where really it wasn't appropriate. But it's really important that you get advice, because some of these schemes are offering you silly amounts of money to leave, and if that's yours, you want to know about it so that you can make the best decision for you. But it is a balance. You know, sometimes it's right to move, sometimes it's right to stay. Probably more times than not, it's still right to stay. But if you're one of the people that's being offered silly money, you really want to know about it, and you don't want to be hanging on to the hook of that final salary guaranteed income. So that's the first type of pension scheme that we want to think about, is that employer-sponsored final salary pension scheme. But as I said, all the rest of the employer-sponsored schemes really fall into the same category as the personal arrangements. So what are your options with them? Well, historically, what you could do is you could buy an annuity. Now you'll notice in the Dream Income strategy, I haven't called it annuity, I've called it a new aside, because it can also be seen as setting light to all that money that you've worked hard to save. Because historically your option with having a personal arrangement was to buy a guaranteed income for the rest of your life. The problem is that usually ended up being a very low level of income. And that's partly, again, because of low interest rates. So you handed over all your money in exchange for a guaranteed income for the rest of your life, but a guaranteed low income. And it felt like at the time that people were being forced by legislation just to fall off this cliff. They'd got to save all of this money and then buy into this annuity, and then they'd be locked in at a very low level of income. So there is an alternative to buying an annuity. Now, an annuity is still a viable option for some people because essentially what you're doing is you're paying a premium, i.e. giving up some income for a guarantee. So for some people that's still going to be the right thing to do. But for others, there is an alternative. And that alternative is known as drawdown. So drawdown is where you leave your money in the pension fund and you drip the money out as quickly or slowly as possible. Now this probably won't be possible from some of your company pension schemes, but you can just move the money to an account that does allow this, and that's easy enough, as long as you get the right advice. So what you can do then is draw out the money in different ways. So let's imagine this big rectangle is your pension fund. When you get to retirement, or any time after the age of 55, you can start to access that flexibly through drawdown. So I said earlier on, you can have 25% of the money as tax-free cash, and 75% of the money is taxed. So if you wanted to take it to its ultimate extreme, you could take all of the money out in one go. You could take 25% out and it would be tax-free, and the remaining 75%, but you'd pay a huge amount of tax. It wouldn't be very sensible to do that, but if you wanted to, that is what you could do. But the great thing about drawdown, if you've got the right type of account, is it gives you the flexibility to draw out money in different ways. So for example, you may say, well, I want to take the tax-free lump sum out to pay off the mortgage, to pay for a conservatory, to do whatever it is, but I don't want to, I'm still earning, I don't want to touch the element that's taxed. And so you can defer that until such time as you don't have any earnings, so that you can take it out more tax efficiently. So you can separate out the tax-free lump sum from the taxed income. But you also don't have to take it all at the same time. So for example, you could say, well, I want to take out a bit of my tax-free lump sum. I want to take out maybe £10,000 of the £100,000 that I'm available to take as my tax-free lump sum. So what will happen then is a slice of your pension will become crystallised. It's a term that is essentially saying you've had the tax-free lump sum from that element. You don't have to take the income if you don't want to, the taxable element if you don't want to, but what you won't ever get is any more tax-free cash from that slice of your pension. But you will still have it for the remainder of your pension. So for example, you may say, well, I want to take £10,000 out of my tax-free cash, but I don't want any taxable income at all, and you can do that and that would be absolutely fine, but you've crystallised that chunk of pension. What you then may say at a later stage is, I've got a year where I've got no earnings, I want to take out £12,500 or whatever the personal allowance is at the time, because you can essentially take that out as tax-free because you've got no other earnings elsewhere. And if you do that, then you could take that out of the crystallised element. So it provides you with a huge amount of flexibility as to how you take your money out, both from a tax-free point of view and a tax point of view. And it allows you to control and therefore minimise the amount of tax you pay. So for example, you may want to phase in your retirement. You may stop your main job and maybe go into running your own smaller business. And in the early years, you may need some money to do that. So you'd maybe take that out as the tax-free lump sum, but you may want to take, if you've got no income, you may take a little bit of income out of the taxed element. What you may find is then that your business gets up and running and you have got income, so you don't need to take any income out of the pension anymore, so you could turn off the income tap from that pension until such time as you wanted to turn it back on again, to avoid paying any unnecessary tax over and above your earnings. So it just gives you a lot of flexibility. And it gives you the opportunity to craft a better income for you in retirement, because historically, people used to create a flat income in retirement. But for me, that's daft. Ultimately, when you retire, you're probably going to want to tick off the bucket list in those early years. You're going to want to go off and do the trip around the world, or the trip around New Zealand, or all of those crazy things you're going to do in the early years when you're young enough and healthy enough to be able to do them. And then what you find in retirement is that gradually, as you get older, you probably leave the house and the country a bit less, and you need a little bit less income. So that's when you can taper that income down. But you may need to spike your income in those last few years if you end up in a care home. So it's about giving you the flexibility, creating a dynamic income that can deliver the lifestyle that you want at the stages that you want. And drawdown just, I suppose, gives you a whole load of additional benefits. So the first is that what's left over in your pension when you die, instead of going back into the company scheme, which you would have done if you had a final salary pension, or back into the insurance company's coffers if you'd had an annuity, what's left in your pension with drawdown is that it goes to your wife or your children or whoever you want to leave that money to. It's your account. In fact, it's actually a very tax efficient account. If you die before 75, there's no income tax or inheritance tax. If you die after 75, there's no inheritance tax, but your beneficiaries will pay income tax on that money. But it's still far more tax efficient than having paid income tax and then inheritance tax, as you do with pretty much all of the rest of your money. So from an inheritance point of view, it's a fantastic way of creating a legacy. It's also a great way to minimise tax, as I said. If you phase in your retirement, you can increase and decrease your income to minimise the amount of income tax you pay. It's brilliant for phasing in retirement because you can gradually increase the amount you draw down as your earnings reduce, and it's adjustable. So you can increase it, decrease it, stop it, start it, whatever life throws at you, you can adapt your pension to deliver the income that you require. It's also a fantastic pot to keep as a backup for care fees. If you end up needing to go into care in later life, it's a pot that's efficient from an inheritance tax point of view, but you can still draw it down if you need it to pay for those care fees in the last few years of life. And then finally, you can get that tax-free cash lump sum at a separate time, a different time to when you want to actually draw the income from it. So it gives you flexibility to pay off the mortgage and those sorts of things if you need to. And I suppose what we're talking about here is the old style of retirement, assuming that you're as likely to climb Kilimanjaro at 95 as you are at 65. And we all know that's not correct. We all know that if you're going to go and climb Kilimanjaro in retirement, it's going to be in those early years. So you want to create a dynamic and flexible income that can deliver what you need. And I suppose it comes down to the fact that you're trying to leave what's left over to your loved ones, the people you care most about, rather than your former employer or some life insurance annuity provider.